Sometimes a villain can make or break a series. Many a television show has been let down by a lackluster big bad or a villain who just did not live up to their potential. This has never been truer than in the case of Pretty Little Liars, whose writers took their best villain and reduced her to a shell of her former self, robbing the audience of a truly terrifying big bad who could have gone on to be one of the most memorable villains in modern television. I am talking about Alison DeLaurentis and all the potential she brought to this show, and how ultimately that potential was completely wasted.
Well, sometimes lies are more interesting than the truth.
Alison DeLaurentis could have only existed in fiction. She was a ridiculously larger-than-life character, at times almost a caricature. Always an important part of the show, she was the antagonist whose reach extended beyond the grave, the villain who still loomed over the liars, the damage she caused, leaving an aftermath which continued long after her death. Her character worked incredibly well as a ghost, a lingering reminder of what the liars had been through, demonstrating how strong and resilient they were to have survived her reign of terror. Fans of the show sometimes use Alison's age to defend her actions, claiming that she was simply a mean girl flexing her power, no different to characters such as Regina George or Heather Chandler. Alison was no mere high school mean girl throwing her weight around in order to prove her popularity. Alison was the thing that mean girls ran from, an evil, scheming sociopath whose actions went far beyond that of a normal bully, and her youth only made her actions that much more horrifying. Alison handpicked 4 girls to be her followers, and she groomed and manipulated these girls with a skill and ease most predators would marvel at. With an uncanny ability to know exactly how to exploit a person's weakness, she preyed on Hannah's weight insecurities, on Arya's emotions, on Spencer's ambition, and perhaps worst and most damaging of all, on Emily's unrequited feelings for her. Using these weaknesses as weapons, Alison spent years breaking the liars, leaving them with psychological damage for years after. And one of the most satisfying parts of the series was watching each of the liars finally shake off Alison's influence, realize how toxic she actually was, and grow into their own identities without her.
It's a nice haul, right? All one of a kind and all mine. Just like you guys.
Even beyond the 4 liars, Alison was a complete monster. She played games only adults should know how to play and went after people who had done absolutely nothing to her. She bullied characters like Lucas and Mona to the point where both characters developed severe mental illnesses. She took advantage of Paige's feelings for Emily and shamed Paige for her sexuality, also to the point where Paige developed a mental illness severe enough that Alison's return made her physically ill. In what was possibly one of Alison's worst moments, she deliberately blinded Jenna Marshall and then pinned the blame on Jenna's stepbrother Toby, all because Jenna had the audacity to stand up to her. Alison even went after adults, attempting to blackmail both Byron Montgomery and Peter Hastings and succeeding in Byron's case. There was seemingly no limit to her evil ways. Interestingly, the audience was never given a proper explanation for Alison's behaviour. Alison was not abused or neglected as a child, even if her family did hide secrets from one another and were all adept at manipulation. There was nothing in her past to suggest psychological damage or any form of abuse from which her destructive tendencies developed. So, the most likely conclusion one can come to is that Alison DeLaurentis was, in fact, a budding sociopath who would only have gotten worse and more damaging as she got older.
I only kill when we need food. Or when I'm bored.
Alison displayed many characteristics of a sociopath. She was extremely charismatic, manipulative, and highly intelligent. She displayed a distinct lack of empathy towards everyone and was extremely dismissive of her friends' feelings and emotions. She seemed to genuinely enjoy inflicting pain, most of it psychological, but through the blinding of Jenna Marshall, it was shown that she had no qualms about inflicting physical pain and causing bodily harm. It is even shown that she was capable of murder, pushing Ian off the bell tower at the end of season 1, not to mention the hints that she may have been responsible for the death of a girl at a college party she and Elias attended. Yet here's the catch. Alison, as an antagonist, as an evil, overbearing presence the girls could not escape, Alison as a villain, worked. It worked beautifully. Allison was a horrifying, damaging, and awful human being, but she was also fascinating and intriguing and amazingly fun to watch. She was the train wreck you could not look away from despite the carnage she caused, an extremely well-written and wonderfully acted villain, and the show initially did a great job handling her character and the damage she caused. She should have gone on to be the show's big bad, the final big A who was calling all the shots, but somewhere along the way, a decision was made, a direction was changed, and Allison's character became something entirely different.
I think you've been looking for me.
I know who you are.
Allison started the series as an antagonist, and she should have remained as such. Even though it was hinted from the very first episode that she was still alive, it would probably have been better if Allison had remained dead, as she worked so much better as a ghost. As previously stated, Allison was a character who was ridiculously larger than life, and when turned into an actual, real, living, breathing character, she was potentially too much to handle. As such, the series was presented with two options when resurrecting her from the dead. Either they would have to change her entire personality and somehow attempt to redeem her for past crimes, or she would have to remain the villain and eventually be revealed to be the big bad. The showrunners opted for the former, and the show and Allison's character suffered accordingly. Allison was always a character we were supposed to love to hate. She was the bully, the alpha bitch, the one who tormented all the characters we had grown to love. In trying to change and soften her in order to make her a better, kinder character, the writers gave her a complete personality makeover, and it simply did not work. Allison worked best when she was scheming and manipulating, when she was walking the hallways as the ruling queen bee, terrorizing everyone with her ruthless, destructive ways. She didn't work as the reformed alpha bitch, soft and meek depending on her friends and showing compassion to her sister. It was a complete 180 for her character, and the writers just did not sell it. The new incarnation of Allison felt empty, hollow, a shell of her former self. She turned from one of the most terrifying and awesome antagonists on the show into a codependent, weak, and somewhat bland young woman whose glory days were far behind her. She no longer felt like the same character we started the series with, and even her hardcore fans complained about the switch in her personality. In the books, Allison was eventually revealed to be the big bad, the ultimate A who was pulling all the strings.
Allison is A, and now I can prove it.
This reveal worked wonderfully, as it allowed Allison to remain the evil, scheming character readers love to hate, and more than that, it provided an extremely personal link between the liars and A. One of the biggest issues with the reveals of Charlotte and later Alex as A in the series is that there was no personal or deep connection to the liars. Whereas Mona being revealed as the original A created an emotional impact due to her friendship with Hannah and her connections with the other liars, Charlotte and Alex fell flat in this department and were two-dimensional villains whose motivations for going after the liars were never properly explained. Had the final A been Allison, it would have created an intense and horrifying emotional impact given her friendship with the liars, and would have provided a satisfactory payoff to the months of torment the characters, and by extension the audience, went through. In turning Allison from an antagonist to a protagonist, the writers missed a huge opportunity to create an amazing big bad, one whose presence was always felt in the show, and whose reveal would have given audiences the emotional payoff they craved. It would have echoed the books and allowed for Allison's character to remain alive, yet still feel like herself. The liars would not have been forced to forgive her, and neither would the audience. She would have remained exactly what she had always been: a cruel, destructive, amazing, intelligent, awesome, and terrifying sociopath whom we love to hate. And it is a real shame that the show did not allow this.